Welcome to Dax's Wasteland Workshop. I'm Dax, and it is my channel update time. It is mid-November, and I had a couple of things I wanted to go over. The VW insect, it was going to be a locust, but it's sort of metamorphosized into a housefly, a nasty, disgusting housefly. And I wanted to put it on the bench and go over it and what I plan to do with it. I have a comment from a viewer I wanted to go over. Let's take a look. I got a comment from a subscriber that I wanted to read, and it's from Slowpoke Models, and the comment is, "Love your videos. I have been bouncing around an idea for a project like what you do for some time. Wasn't sure how to do it. Glad I found your videos. Could you make a video of scratch materials, parts, and supplies that would be a benefit to start collecting if a person wanted to start building these?" Absolutely. That's a fantastic comment. Thank you so much, Slowpoke Models. Yes, we will do that. I have a ton of parts in a bin that has a lot of compartments. How many does it have? Here I've got 2 bins of automotive parts. You'll see there's not many engine blocks in here. And that's because I've repurposed the engine blocks into the side thrusters on a majority of these cars. So whenever I find a engine block half, I generally repurpose it. A couple firewalls. Yeah, you'll see that I don't have many engine blocks in here, which is pretty crazy considering that many of the kits come with 2 engines for, sports package options. And there's an engine block, half an engine block. Very useful for hover cars. You position it in under the wheel well like this. Here, hard to tell, I've disguised them, but there's 2 engine blocks, 4 halves. I am not a very organized person, so I find every once in a while I do have to go through all my parts and try to sift through and reorganize, and it's a nightmare. I often will use the springs and the shock absorbers with the suspension. It's just, you can, all those little parts up in there, when you look up in the wheel arches, you can see, oh, well, it's got parts, and they look familiar. Oh, one of the things I wanted to show, why I keep all my parts. Check this out. I just found this today when I was looking through all the parts, and I found this Cadillac Eldorado front bumper. And I looked at it and I'm like, well, what did I cut that up for? And then it dawned on me, oh yeah, I remember I used the bottom part here. There's 2 headlights or headlamp bezels. There's 2 inlets right here that I cut off and used on this truck. And they are under this bed. And really hard to see, but there's 2 little intakes right there. And right there. Those are from that bumper. Tiny little, you barely see it in there. But it's there. It's a space filler. Something to fill up some space that looks believable. I love this truck. I implore you to watch the video from the Origin series on this truck. This is a sleeper. It's one of my favorites. It's just a real badass truck. If you haven't seen the video on the Bel Air, another one of my favorites. Another sleeper. This one's a great car, and it's got so much junk and detail on it. Check this out. You're gonna want to see it after I do this. You're gonna want to see the video after I do this, because in the Origin series video, I pull this out. Oh, here's a little false compartment, I guess you'd say. I'll call this box linkages. This is all mechanical looking parts or anything that looks like a linkage. They tend to be dark gray, and that's, I think, because they're the internal skeleton structure of Gundams make up a lot of these pieces. I don't know that I'll ever use this, but I said that about this piece in the Fly. This piece right here. Never thought I would use this. It's this giant piece with an angle on it. And I was thought many times about throwing that piece away, and there it is. It's you never know. A lot of these pieces just go in and take up space and look like they belong. I use this box quite often. This is the round box. It's got my round parts. It's got my round parts in it. Or should I call it, I should actually call it the circular box, because it has circular pieces in it. Round, I think, would be a ball shape. So maybe I need to think about renaming that. Circular pieces. I go to this bin a lot. This is one of my favorite bins. It contains beautiful rims, anything circular. I oftentimes take my rims and make thrusters out of them, as you can see by the truck. Does that look familiar? Oops. These are just stacked rims, different sizes. If you go online and Google, just look up turbine engine, and you can see that they tend to go from the intake side to the exhaust side. You know, they graduate from large, and they tend to change shape and diameter as they go down to a fairly, a little bit smaller size. Intakes are usually larger, so I will put the largest rim on the intake side and then graduate down. That might be a bit extreme, but I will just go until I find something that works. And for me, I always do them in pairs. I almost always do two jets, two turbines. So I just have to be sure I have enough parts to do two. So you could have something that graduates in size down, smaller, until you get to your exhaust side. Say your exhaust is down over here. Most of these are wheel rims. That's a cap of something, but I use them as intakes sometimes. I used it on my hover taxi that I just made. I used two rims for the front intakes. I've had so many rims at one point that I was throwing them away. but they're useful. So I would definitely save them. For the fly, one of the things I'm contemplating is to put hubcaps and these center caps all over it. It would almost look like warts, and then make them heavily rusted. But I don't think I'm going to do that. I used one time in the my 63 Corvette hovercar. I took 4 brake rotors and stacked them together and put them in the back, and they look like a convincing power plant. I'll show a picture of it. And as you can tell by color, these are majority Gundam pieces. They're armor pieces, and they come in quite handy. They're detailed enough that you can use them, disguise them a little bit. This one's got wing parts that have flat surfaces that look like they could be some type of wing. These right here, I think they came off a shield, some kind of a large shield. And these can be, I use something similar on my BRE Datsun 240 for almost like ground effects. They were like these little winglets on the bottom, and they really worked out well. So, I occasionally will put little wings on some of the cars, usually on the undercarriage, facing downward, not really noticeable. I try not to turn them into planes. I mean, they're jet propelled, heavy cars. But yeah, I occasionally throw some wings on them. More Gundam parts. I use these quite often. The Gundam armor. Trying to think of some examples, and I really can't. This car. That's a Gundam piece there. These are Gundam pieces. These. These little winglets. Just the tiniest little pieces. Like, these are similar. Weapons. The weapon box. I don't put a lot of weapons on my cars. Recently been thinking I should. I don't put a lot of weapons on my cars. The post-apocalypse cars, yes, of course. But the hover cars, I think I have 3 that have weapons on them. So I end up with a lot of weapons from Gundam. And they have such interesting detail that they can be used on a ton of different stuff. You could put these under a car, and they could be some kind of a, I don't know, fuel delivery system, intakes. I don't know what they could be, but they're cool looking. You could just run that on the undercarriage and attach fuel lines or little winglets to it. They're just intricate looking little pieces. I'm determined to use these on something. This shield, looks similar. I am really excited about the fly. Should be finishing that up here in a couple weeks. I'm really having difficulty deciding on how to paint it. I want it to be as if the fly came from, junkyard collecting parts for its to make itself. Does it have a driver? Yeah, I think it's gonna have a driver. Obviously, it's got a steering wheel and all that. Okay, I wanted to show how it comes apart. So these right now are being held in with sticky tack. When I'm done with the model, I'm gonna glue these in place where I want them, but just for mocking it up, I use sticky tack on just about everything. So you can see that blue. This will come off pretty easy. So the wings are not on permanently right now. They're actually pretty sturdy. These are made out of styrene square tube solid. You can see I've covered them with all kinds of junk. Probably my favorite part of this model, this part here, this whole unit. I don't know what you would call it, the wing unit. Now that is also held down with sticky tack in the front. A lot of this is Gundam parts. Intake right here was a Gundam part. These two large halves, Gundam parts. But I've covered them with more Gundam parts and covered them with styrene plates. Obviously these are Gundam parts, but I've disguised them with plates, bolt heads, Gundam part. Try to disguise them with tubes and pipes, fuel lines. I've covered that with a grill. And this fits on this part easily. This is also, and that's not a Gundam part, but it's kitbash from something else. But this goes right on the top of that and holds pretty firm. But I will eventually fasten that with some kind of pin. The jets in the rear, I don't know what I got this from, but it kind of fits in there and holds the jets. This will be covered with stuff. You'll see the springs, but it'll be disguised. And there's what's holding the LEDs on to the end of the thrusters here. So that goes in there. That's another assembly. This comes off. This is the holder that holds the wings on. And this is just held on with friction right now. It's a real tight fit right here. This will eventually be glued on. A lot of this is permanently glued on. Temporarily have sticky tack holding my LED wires in. There you can see the LEDs are inside these square tubes. The green is much brighter. I mean, much brighter than the yellows. The greens are in at an angle. They're in a 45-degree angle, so the light is not shining directly forward as it should be. Therefore, I'm losing some of the light. If this was reversed and the yellows were on this side, you barely see the yellow. This way they're going straight in and the light is spreading out evenly. So I'm going to leave them in the front. They look good in the front. And then I'm going to put 3mm LEDs in here. I may tweak that a little bit so it's giving it some upward lift. Then I'll dress this up with some pipes and parts. Mandibles on the front of some kind. We got a gear for chewing things up. Some kind of mandibles coming out of here. Headlights will be the warm white. Parking lights. Stoplights. So it's going to have a total of 2, 4, 6, 8, 10, 12, 14 lights. And I was thinking about doing a cutting torch on the front like I did on my my Model T Spider. So, anywhere from 14 to 20 lights. Maybe I'll do something in the cab. Interior is really cool in here too. I'll try to get this apart a little more. But let's look at the legs. I made a frame out of styrene tube. I work with styrene tube. It's probably my most used. Styrene is just amazing. You can do so much with it. This is the majority. The framework of it's all styrene square tube, different sizes. Pinned at the hinges. I looked online to look up flies and tried to replicate their legs as best I could. Now, whether I did or not is kind of questionable. I want these to appear as if they're made out of junk. So by the time this is finished, I plan to add a ton more greeblies all over it. And I'm hoping that I can have these where they'll position and they'll stay. If they don't, I'll have to glue them in place. And I want the fly to be in possibly a taking off pose where the back legs will be out like this. Jets with thrust, and maybe the front legs out slightly. A lot of jewelry cord for the hydraulic lines. Each leg is slightly different than the other. The wings were fun to make. They're made from a collection of different styrene plates and rods, pieces. This is scale barbed wire. And I put random bolt holes and rivet heads. So this looks like it was just pieces of scrap metal and pieces of scrap plate. Now the bottoms aren't done as well, and that's what I'm going to address. I'm going to put more pieces on the bottom. The tops I did up really well. The bottoms need a little work. They have mechanical details as if somehow maybe you could do a little lift. And there's just a lot of wire holding things together. I just can't tell you how happy I am with this. This thing looks crazy. And when I first covered this with the plates, I had still thought this was going to be a locust or a grasshopper. But when I covered that with plates, I was like, oh, that screams fly. That just screams fly. So that's when I put the plates on here. The problem is that those plates, I think, need to be thicker and more uneven. But we shall see. One of the dilemmas I'm having with the bus is the paint job, and I've got 3 options, and I can't choose any of them. First option, to do it in black, maybe a couple of different shades of black, a lot of metallics in the undercarriage and whatnot, but it's still, I want it to be dirty. So black with an iridescent finish to resemble a housefly. It would look awesome with the green lights and the yellow. I think it would look amazing. But the problem for me is that I don't get to do any of the rust work on it. I could do some of the rust work with black, but it just doesn't get the same effect as if it's like junk parts on it. How do I justify that the parts are iridescent black in some dystopian insect junkyard world? So then the other option is, do I paint it, of course, weathered? I want it to be weathered. So severely weathered with an original VW color. They were red, orange, beige, blue, green. They were all the the basic colors with a white top. But do I cover it in panels like this? Sheet metal panels. We're losing wings. Do I cover it in sheet metal panels, leaving some gaps between so it shows the color of the body? And heavily rusted. That's kind of where I'm thinking I'm gonna go. And then the third option is completely covered in panels like this. I want to redo these, but completely covered in panels where you don't see the body color, as if you didn't have enough sheet metal to cover the entire car. That's my dog. I wanted to thank you for watching. If you enjoyed this content, please click the subscribe button and leave a comment. I'd love to hear from you. I appreciate your time. Thank you so much. And have a happy Thanksgiving. Ran alert with my wife and she says Brundlebus, and I think that's about the best name. Lola. I'm in the middle of something. Thank you.